Hey everyone, I'm bringing you a deck check and a play guide on a deck called Warudo, which you can find on the website under the Nova Grappler section. So let's get started. Your starting Vanguard is Blaukluger, and you absolutely have to have this for the deck to work. And then your trigger lineup is going to be 12 critical triggers, as usual, and 4 heal. So obviously you want that because you always want to get your opponent as quickly as possible to death. And in addition to that, there's another reason why you want that in this deck in particular. For Asura Kaiser. So there's going to be a lot of grade 3s in this deck. You want 4 Asura Kaiser, you want 4 Immortal Asura Kaiser. Move that. 4 Immortal Asura Kaiser. Sometimes you can get the cross ride, which is okay. And then 4 Mond Blaukluger, 1 Blaukluger, Stern Blaukluger. And so I'll show you why you use so many grade 3s once you see the rest of the deck set up. Use these samurais, grade 2, Jupiter Blaukluger, and 1 regular Blaukluger. And you only need the 1. 4 Perfect Guard, staple. 4 Blaupanzer. Now this is where the deck works. If you have this Blaupanzer, and you can ride this over here, you get your Blaukluger. So every single copy of Blaupanzer on turn 1 counts as both a grade 1 and a grade 2 for ride purposes, which means that, in other words, for example, you can take 3 less grade 3s or 4 less grade 3s if you're adventurous, and you can run those as your grade 3 lineup. So you notice I only have a grade 4, whatever lineup you want, actually. So you'll notice I have 3 Jupiter, 4 Samurai, and 1 Blaukluger. That's only 8. So normally you run 11, but these allow you to run just the 8, and then you can put those into your grade 3s. And so that's why you have the 13 grade 3s. You get the extra grade 3s from just, like, you take a little bit of a hit to your grade 1s. It's not a big deal. And then the last grade 1 is your Bear Down Samurai. And so the way this deck works is that, firstly, it has no bad ride at all. So it's really unlikely, but if you're forced to ride Stern Blaukluger at some point as your grade 3, that's amazing because he has mid-game. So that's great. You counterblast your 2, you stand your Stern, or they have to guard it every turn, which is great because you get pluses off of that. Stern is amazing, and the great thing is because you run the Blaupanzers in this deck, you can actually, if I can find them, because you run the Blaupanzers at 4, even if you don't ride this, or if you ride it and you get extra ones, call it down, discard one of your grade 3s, and you can go and search for him from your deck. So if you realize, okay, my opponent's going to be playing this kind of deck, go ahead and get your Stern out and just destroy them, because if they commit early, they don't have the shielding to stop Stern. And you can respond to that, which is rare in Vanguard and very powerful. Your Mond Blaukluger is kind of an ideal ride, because he's going to stand your entire field. And I know one thing is that people try to counter this card. There's no counters in Vanguard, but they try to counter this card by attacking your front row rear guards. Just like you have so many grade 3s in your deck, just slap cards down. Like let them die or guard them as though they were attacking the Vanguard. It doesn't matter. But when this goes off, all hell breaks loose, because the ideal scenario is that you have Mond Blaukluger and you ride Immortal Asura Kaiser over that. And the reason that's ideal is because, well, I'll show you scenarios later. Essentially, you're going to get massive amounts of stands, and your opponent can't guard it. These are really great to ride as well. You can ride, okay, I think probably the worst ride in the whole deck is if you ride an Immortal Asura Kaiser and just sit on that until late game. I think that's probably the worst thing the deck can do. And that's funny because this is actually your win condition anyway. So that's your win condition. That's also a win condition. You can ride that first. That's really great. This over this is the best you can possibly do in the deck. And then you've also got the option You can Asura Kaiser mid-game, and you'll get stands from that because the deck has 13 grade 3s, which is great because if you just drew this one thing, obviously you've got the 12 left in the deck and huge probabilities to check into that. You're going to get a trigger or you're going to get a stand from the grade 3s pretty much every turn. So it really smooths out your ability to do things to your opponent. You can cross ride, which is great. If your opponent's playing really badly, you can punch them for that and guard with your Jupiter Blauklugers from hand or leftover boosters if you have any, so that 5k shielding goes a long way. You don't run the draw triggers. I know there are people who run draw triggers for cross rides to shave shields. They get the extra cards so they can split the shielding, but that doesn't really work too well, and my recording has just stopped, but I'm going to keep going because this is just a stint I'm doing right after locals, so... Scenarios. So if you look at the ride ratio in this deck with Stern Blau or with the Stern Blau's ride chain, and you look at the way that it's set up, you actually have the same ride chance as everyone else. Pretty much the same number of boosters as everyone else. You have same number of attackers as everyone else. It's just that your grade 2s have been turned into grade 3s, essentially. So you have a little bit less shielding, little tiny bit less shielding, about 15k total in the whole deck, so that doesn't do crap. You're really not going to be missing out on much shielding, so that's really great. But you get a massive toolbox, so you have no bad ride. So you can, if you Asura Kaiser first, that's good mid-game, and you can get the cross ride, and if you Mond Blaukluger, that's amazing. If you get Immortal Asura, that's like your worst thing, and it's like what you're aiming for in the deck. So here's essentially how it works. Hopefully you're not getting absolutely destroyed by Raging Form Dragon or Minerva or something that can do this like every turn. But if you can get, for example, let's just have a ride. It's raining now. I hope you can hear that. If you can get just, let's see, Mond Blaukluger, I'll show you the absolute best thing you can do in that turn. Just say one of whatever the hell. Sure. Okay, that works. And who cares? Set up a thing. So essentially what you want to do is you want to get something like this, where you don't have to have this. This is just ideal. If you can get a samurai in either column, any samurai in either column, that's great. One is good. One is amazing. These guys are going to die like instantly the moment you put them out, because players are bad and they think that like they have to kill them immediately. They really only have to kill them the turn before you break ride. So I guess players are just bad. Whatever. Anyway, when you get these though, like the only thing that you have to worry about is if you're going up against decks like Rebirth, where they just burninate all your boosters, or if you go up against Dauntless Drive Reverse and they go off first, your boosters are gone. You have no boosters. But this gambit's fine. So you break ride, do your thing. I don't know. You have damage. That's suspicious damage right there. So you end up with this kind of thing. So you attack with everything first. So you got two stages. And then you can even attack for one stage. It really doesn't matter because you're going to absolutely destroy your opponent. Now, keep this in mind. When you declare attacks in Vanguard, you declare the attack first, and then you declare the boost. So things that happen when on attack, you should have your booster standing. So you actually only stand 4 for Mond. So just bear that in mind. And then you continue the boost. These all stand. So if you twin drive, okay, here's how this deck works. You twin drive, right? Get a trigger, whatever. Those are stacked, but so it really doesn't matter what you twin drive in this deck, because if you get like a shitty grade 3 that would normally get you killed because it's just stuck in your hand, and like if you don't have a perfect card, you're dead because that's not shielding. Instead, you get a second chance with it because you now have the skill where you can counterblast 2. And you can discard 2, which you discard the grade 3s, and you stand your Vanguard. It gets 10k power, and you can stand any other unit, which you can stand that as well. Now, when these stand, they're going to get 3k power each for every stand unit. So that became stand, that became stand, that became stand, that became stand. So they all get 3 times 4 for that. So they all get the 12k, which is terrifying. And that's plus 2 stages to each column. If this guy also stands, they get another 6k each. So if that happens, your opponent is going to cry because, interestingly, we did some math and we found out that if you put your entire deck into the guard zone in this turn, like if you get the stand, if you get the Mond break ride, you get Samurai in each column. The ideal scenario, which totally happens. It totally happens. If you get that, it's impossible for your opponent to win because they'd essentially have to be at like 2 damage, I think, and they'd have to have several perfect guards. So they would have to, this, is like a normal field at first, and then you stand it all, it becomes massive. They have to have perfect guard, perfect guard, perfect guard. So that's really just not going to happen. They have to be able to put their entire deck into the guard zone, and even then that would not stop it. You would need more shielding than is in a deck. So if you twin drive a grade 3, that's going to stand and you're going to destroy people. If you twin drive a trigger, then you're going to destroy people. So the idea behind this deck is very similar to Crazy Daimond, where you can get that guard break, or you can get triggers. So the whole point of the deck is to increase what you can do in late game by increasing the number of things that trigger check you. Ethics is pretty good for that, Ethics Extreme, where he drive checks a grade 1 or higher and you get to stand one thing. But really what you're looking at is pretty minor, even in a Beast 80 deck where, you get to stand the booster as well. It's pretty minor compared to, okay, either you check a trigger, which is probably going to kill your opponent at that point, or I'm restanding this ridiculous Vanguard and it's getting insane amounts of power and the rest of my stuff is getting insane amounts of power. And I can tell you, without Mond, just with these Samurais on the field, these will get 6k just from this, which is enough because it's another stage on those columns that they're in, which is really great. Now, of course, this column is absolutely insanely ridiculous because it has 2 there. One of the things people will do to you before that turn is they will deny you. They'll kill your rear guards. So if you played them such that, you have rear guards you just don't give a crap about, like grade 3s. If you have grade 3s here up in the front and they kill them, it doesn't really matter. Let them die. And that's when you slap down your Samurais. Try not to do that as not too early. You may not be able to choose, but try not to do that too early. I've noticed that it's actually pretty typical for my Vanguard booster in this deck to end up being a trigger or even a perfect guard, which is totally doable because in this deck you take the hit of one less booster than every other deck in the game because they have Forerunner and you don't, and so sometimes you have to overextend an early trigger or an early booster where it really doesn't make a huge difference in the long run. So this deck is absolutely insane and ridiculous, and there's pretty much no late game that isn't insane. These Samurai only work if you have an Asura. So that's why you run the Asura Kaiser and the Immortal Asura in the deck. So essentially you have 3, ignoring Stern Blaukluger, you have 3 kind of win cons. The whole fucking thing has a win con, but you have 3 win cons. So if you can get any 2 of them, your opponent's obliterated. If you can get any Asura plus any Samurais, your opponent can be obliterated, just completely obliterated. If you get Immortal, your opponent can be obliterated. If you get Mond, your opponent can be obliterated. So if you get all 3, that's what I just showed you. That's where the deck, you can't even guard with your deck. So, getting 2 out of 3 is essentially what you want to go for. You can also get the cross ride. It's not a win con, but it can help somewhat. So This is Warudo. It's terrifying. I win with it constantly. It's got a 0.5 or higher win ratio against like every deck in the game, pretty much. So 0.5 means 50%, which means it's exactly equal or better than every other deck in the entire game that I've been able to test, that my community's been able to test, and there's hundreds of tests. So this is a pretty serious deck, and I know there are complaints, you know, less shielding. Well, there's only 15k less shielding in the deck. There's barely less shielding in the deck. There's barely less. It's actually there are 5 grade 3 units that you usually don't end up in the deck, but you can run 9 normally and you're fine. So there's really only 4 extra grade 3 units. So that's 20k shielding out of the deck, and most people take that out of their deck when they run freaking draw triggers. So I kind of think of it as like, well, I'm running the crits. It's not a big deal. And you do take the 1 hit on boosters because of this. And you know, it doesn't really matter if you ride something that isn't Blaupanzer with this. No sweat, you're going to get Blaupanzer 54% of the games after Mulligan 3. So if you can swing a Mulligan 3 every game, you know, you got a coin flip chance to actually get that, and that's good. But if you don't get it, it's totally fine. Ride whatever the hell you have. And, you know, I have in more than one occasion called a trigger as a booster for this particular deck, for the Vanguard, and that's been fine. And being able to use those samurais in the sides is really worth that, getting rid of that trigger. So this deck wins massively on average, more than it probably should whenever I play against actual people. So when I'm not even playing against, like, just for testing purposes, if this plays against people, it tends to win far more on average because people misplay really hard against this deck. And they tend to give me tons of shielding by attacking into my rear guards way too early. Well, this deck has, you know, something like 20 rear guards, so 20 attack or rear guards. So attacking into that, you know, if you attack into an interceptor, you're giving me 5k shielding if you're attacking with a 2-stage column. And if you attack into a grade 3, you're giving me 2 stages of shielding. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm going to let that die, and I'm just going to put something else down there because this deck rips them off really hard. Oh, one more note to note about this deck before the video is over. I have on more than one occasion deliberately mulliganed away grade 3s. Like if I really didn't want to deal with that crap. Like I wanted to get lots of grade 1s and grade 2s and get an early rush. And I didn't want to deal with possibly like getting multiple grade 3s into my hand early. You can totally do that. And it doesn't matter if you draw shielding, if you draw guard, if you draw triggers from that, that's fine. Cause you're going to want that guard. You're going to want the boosting ability from that. All your grade 3s have 11k power, so they can totally boost that. And that's not really a problem in this deck. You want to save all your perfect cards though. Because if you get hit by Draconic Overlord, the Rebirth, or Minerva, or some crap like insane restanding Vanguards, you can end up losing out because they get it guaranteed. They usually have to nuke their hand though, and you only have to discard 2 for him. And his effect, by the way, is every turn of late game. So, like, you don't have to set up for this. The deck is set up for this. So this is just something you passively can get every turn of late game. So that's pretty cool. The deck works wonders, and I hope you build it, and good luck.